Hi, I'm Robert Harley, editor of the Absolute Sound magazine, and I'm here in my listening room with Rick Brown from Hi-Fi One in Carlsbad, California. And he's come out to my listening room to install a very interesting new amplifier that I'll be reviewing in the magazine soon. It's called the David Berning Hi-Fi One SET Reference. It's a single-ended triode amplifier that's been maybe 5 or 6 years in development. It's been quite a project, and Rick's here, and he's going to talk about this new amplifier. And next to me is the Alsavox Caravaggio ribbon loudspeaker, full-range ribbon, that we're driving with this 20-watt SET amplifier. So that's quite an interesting combination of SET with full-range ribbon. So Rick, tell us a little bit about Hi-Fi One.
Yeah, my company is designed to put together systems for audiophiles, and in the main, I am a manufacturer as well as a retailer. So I do sell my manufactured equipment, like these amplifiers, direct to users around the world, but I also have a constituency that buys other products that I buy from other manufacturers. Things like turntables and digital devices, etc. I resell those as well, cables, etc. But when it came down to the amplifiers, this has been my passion for a very, very long time, since I met David Berning, and that's probably been over 25 years ago. And David was literally making an amplifier at that time that was called the Siegfried. And the Siegfried literally was a 9-watt per channel amp that one of the options was with the 300B tube. And it was one of the very first output transformerless amplifiers to be single-ended and triode. And it weighed 9 pounds, as we can recall. It was a very lightweight amp because it had a switch mode power supply. And its choke literally was a choke that was an electronic choke. So what did all that come out to be? It allowed a 300B tube to not have to go through an output transformer and be able to directly drive an amplifier with a low enough impedance to drive it directly. That led us to thinking about something that Robert Harley wrote, and that is the SET conundrum, okay? Simply stated, if you have paid attention to single-ended amplifiers over the years, one of the things that you've noted is that they are real linear in the mid-range. But the problem with an SET amplifier is that very typically they're talked about almost like tone controls because they don't have real linearity at the frequency extremes. And that's what Robert wrote eloquently about. Nelson Pass wrote eloquently about that. And we've decided, because we had a technology that David Berning's developed, which he calls his Zodal, it allowed us to make an amplifier that is single-ended, that does give us that linearity in the mid-range, but at the same time, we believe that it addresses in a very positive way this frequency extreme problem that you have with your typical SET. Now, in order to make this, I think someone said before me, it takes a village, okay? It really did take a village to do this. And so I am the person that literally had this vision for us being able to take this Zodal technology, which Robert has written about in 2016, I think he wrote again in 2017 about the original push-pull 211-845 amp.
Right, amazing sounding amplifier, one of the best, if not the best amplifiers I've ever heard.
Well, all I can say, Robert, is that it warms my heart to hear that again. That's all I can say. It warms my heart to hear that again.
A great amplifier. I still remember it very fondly, and I had visitors to my listening room who heard it. I was driving Magico Q7s at the time with it.
There you go.
And that was a pretty phenomenal combination.
Well, you know, I'm starting to get the bumps. I mean, you know, I love hearing that, okay? But nonetheless, that amplifier was push-pull. It was 60 watts per channel, and we knew that it had some limitations. And if we could make it single-ended and not have that switching effect in the mid-range, we could make a more linear amplifier. But we knew that the Zodal would allow us to make the frequency extremes finally in line with that mid-range. But to do so, it was a long journey. And it began with starting with that original thought from the Siegfried amp that we talked about. We couldn't scale that up. That couldn't be scaled up with an electronic choke. So we had to literally have a physical choke. And we went through a variety of different kinds of physical chokes and went around the world looking for choke manufacturers until finally we found the people at Ypsilon in Greece. And Demetrius and his childhood friend, who actually is the artist that winds these chokes for us, that became the real linchpin in making this work. because if you look at the amplifier, there's 4 boxes, and there is an umbilical that connects the 2 mono chassis to these massive chokes, which are 55 pounds. And they're wound with pure silver. And what we found is that even when the inductance was exactly the same from various manufacturers that made the chokes, none of them sounded like the one that's made from Ypsilon. None of them sounded like theirs in silver. It was absolutely lights out, the best thing we had heard. And Robert, you know, I just want to ask you, would you just chime in for a second about what happened with Marantz? Because I think that's a good background, you know, in terms of the choke, their whole winding.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a good one.
Well, the legendary Marantz Model 9 amplifier, they made the prototype, and Saul Marantz heard it and thought it sounded fabulous. And an in-house guy wound the output transformer. And then when they went to production, they outsourced the transformer. They got the first batch of transformers in, and the amplifier didn't sound anything like it should, like the prototype did. And they went through a bunch of different suppliers and designs and tried to figure out what it was. And eventually Saul Marantz had the guy who wound the prototype by hand said, "You're going to wind every output transformer for production." So every model, Marantz Model 9 out there, a guy hand wound the output transformer. That's how important the transformer is to the sound.
Absolutely. And similarly, here we are now in 2024, and at Ypsilon, there's one man that winds these. And of course, we had the exact same inductance wound by a variety of people around the world. Every single one of them sounded different. But when we got to the one that was made by Ypsilon, we realized that there is an art to this. There's truly an art to this. So inductance beside the point. And when he made that in silver, it was just so dramatically better. I mean, the tonal color, the density, the body, the air, the beauty of it, the burnished beauty. It was almost like if you use pixels as an example, we just added a whole lot more pixels. You know, the picture became so high definition, but so beautiful at the same time.
So it's a 4-chassis amplifier.
Yes.
2 amplifier chassis and 2 huge outboard chokes.
Yes, 2 55-pound outboard chokes, and then the amplifier itself uses one L-Rog 211 or 845 tube. The general preference is for the 845 tubes, but it will use either tube interchangeably. There's no fuse, there's no external fuse in this. It doesn't need one, it operates so fast in terms of its protection. And the other part about it is that we have an amplifier at this stage of the game anyway, that we can make some subtle changes with it with things like the 12AT tube versus the 12AU tube. And we had that experience here in Robert's room where we started off with a 12AT. You know, we had a Siemens and it was an 801S, and we had an issue with one of them, which happens with tubes. And we decided at the same time, we don't need the gain, so let's lower the gain and use the 12AU, which is a 1960 SIFTI, French SIFTI. And to say that the difference was instant, right? You know, I mean, we knew that we had the right thing. The gain, yes, it was lower, noise floor was lower, but when the noise floor is lower, all kinds of things became intelligible to us, more intelligible that were buried in the noise floor, that literally came through much clearer. And there's another issue that Robert will be talking about later on that we added to it that made a huge difference too. I'll leave that for your review. Right. But the other part about the amplifier that's really kind of interesting in this is that David Berning for a long time, what he needed, in my opinion, was a partner in all of this. And the partner, there's another partner that I've left out, and it would be remiss if I didn't talk about Steve McCormick of SMC Audio. He's the other part of this. He designed the chassis in terms of its all of the mechanical resonances that we're dealing with it. That's all him. The tank wood part of the chassis, the carbon fiber parts of the chassis, those are all things that he did. We have another partner with the people in England, and also they are in Poland where they actually have the company headquartered, and that's for the RevelPod feet. That's an integral part of this amplifier and how it sounds. We found another partner now, and that's Mike Levatis of HRS. He's designed some products that he's had in his portfolio for some time that allow us to deal with ringing in the chassis. And
he makes the custom racks and
he
amplifier stands. Very sophisticated engineering in those racks. So he makes the vibration control.
He does. The dampening wings that go on top of the chassis, but he's also made some spectacular amp stands, which I could go into a long, long dissertation about them. But let's just say Mike is a true technologist, and he's made something that has made a dramatic difference in managing the vibration. You know, we really are dealing with the issues of a big giant choke that weighs 55 pounds that does nothing but vibrate. It's one of the reasons it's 4 chassis. We've taken that big lump of vibration and radiation out of where you have vacuum tubes, okay, that are in there. They don't need that. And there's a lot more to it in terms of things like the custom Teflon sockets that we've had made and the beryllium copper that we use. It has little fingers inside of it to hold the tubes dramatically. So all of those things have contributed. When you add up the contribution of Ypsilon, which is tremendous. I mean, I cannot underscore how important their winding of these silver chokes are, which, by the way, one man, it takes him an entire week to wind the two of them. So he literally does a layer of silver, and then he turns around and he puts a type of adhesive, epoxy, whatever it is, I'm not really sure what it is, resin. He has to cook that, if you will, with heat, wait for it to cure, and then do another layer. To make two of those chokes, Robert, and I showed you the video that I did when I was in Greece, with the people at Ypsilon. That's a week's worth of labor for one man.
Yeah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tom Martin, executive publisher of The Absolute Sound and a reviewer here on the TAS YouTube channel. I'd like to invite you to take advantage of a special offer that we have. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter simply by entering your email address either in the form you'll find on screen, or you can click on the link in the show notes below and enter your email address. Twice a week, actually, we will send you audio reviews, written reviews that you won't find here on YouTube, music reviews, and our famous Editor's Choice and Product of the Year awards. This allows you to find the best equipment in audio, as well as read our extensive and authoritative review coverage of hundreds of audio products. We would enjoy having you as subscribers. And now back to the show.
So this is a very esoteric amplifier.
Tremendous.
Developed over many years, all these different things, and very much a global collaborative effort by experts in different areas that you've brought together to realize your vision of what this amplifier should be.
Right down to umbilical cables, right down to IEC connectors that are silver instead of the typical IEC connectors. Every single part of this, and particularly the tank wood. We went through a variety of thicknesses of tank wood and different ways of milling it out until we got a sonic resonance that we're looking for. There was a sound associated with that. It's very similar to the sound of, say, the body of an instrument, right? So there's a tuning that goes into this, and a lot of this is truly just listening. Now, in order to listen and be certain that you're moving north instead of just east and west, or sometimes south, okay? You have to have good references, and I'm fortunate in that I have people like Ma Recordings and Todd Garfinkel that brings over his music. People like Bob Atea from Yarling Records. He knows exactly what he recorded because I was with him when Arian Jensen did the recordings. And when they bring those over in reel-to-reel tape and we get to listen to that, we've got a real reference with somebody that knows what it is. That helps me to make good decisions. So at the end of the day, we feel very confident that with all of these experts, and I think they're all experts, every one of them, I think they're expert in what they do. Their collaboration in this and sharing in my vision to make this amplifier was one of the greatest satisfactions I've had in my life. Truly, truly.
So if a person buys this amplifier, you personally you go out and set it up.
That's right.
And listen to different tubes with
That's
them.
right, anywhere in the world.
And fit it with their system.
That's right. And if they tell me that they really don't like necessarily some aspect sonically that I know I can deal with, whether it's with umbilical cords, whether it's with isolation feet, whether it's with input tubes, whether it's output tubes, if you change the 211 in this, you have an entirely different amplifier. I mean, it's entirely different because the 211 tube is entirely different. Usually, you won't see an amplifier that will bias automatically to either one. And because this amplifier has a switch mode power supply and full power factor correction, what does that mean? It's a plug and play amp anywhere in the world with no adjustment.
Can you talk a little bit about speaker matching and the importance of that with a 20-watt amplifier?
Yes, absolutely, Robert. The key issue here, and Robert and I were talking about this earlier, when building a system, and as we started this off, I said, what does Hi-Fi One do? One of the things is help clients build systems, right? It's not just manufacturing product. And there's the three legs of the stool that I like to talk to all of them about, and that is one, you need to deal with the room first. If you're not gonna deal with the room, we're not gonna take this trip unless you really wanna go there by buying equipment, but you're not gonna get there. The room's first. Then electrical and mechanical isolation is the second issue. But the third one, which is often missed, if you don't have the amp speaker interface that operates in a linear push-pull fashion or close to that, I don't care what you do in front of it. I don't care how wonderful your equipment is in front of that. It's not going to give you the kind of sonics that you could have if the amp speaker interface worked. It's not all about the efficiency of the speaker. It's not all about just looking at the numbers and where it dips, and typically it's dipping in the bass frequencies, or some of them rise really, really high in the treble double digits. Those things are difficult for any amp to drive, whether it's solid state or tube. You got 20 amps, if you're in 20 hertz, and the darn thing's got an impedance of 24 ohms, that's tough for anything to drive. And if it drops at the other end, it makes it even harder, because these vacuum tube amplifiers are great devices for voltage. They're not good devices for current. And just the reverse is true when you talk about the big monolithic solid state Class A amplifiers. They're just the opposite. They got a lot of current, but they start to get weaker and weaker as we go up, in impedance. That's one of the beauties of what David Berning has done with this, is that we have a lot more instantaneous current as a result of his circuitry that allows us to be able to drive the bass the way you hear it in this room. And we can wait for the review for that, okay?
But we're driving a full range ribbon speaker
That's
here
right.
to fully satisfying listening levels with 20 watts.
With 20 watts, yeah.
A full range ribbon.
Exactly. And so, but we haven't changed, there's nothing that's changed in the context of what's written in the book, okay? It's still 20 watts. So you have to have some sensibilities about the kind of speaker that you match it up to. But we've matched this amplifier up to a lot of speakers that frankly it shouldn't be able to drive. And one of the reasons I can say that is that it clips so gracefully that you really can't necessarily hear it. Now, I'd ask you to chime in a little bit on that, because we've had a little bit of experience here. But it was written about by Paul Sidor. Did I say that right? Paul Sidor.
Right.
Paul Sidor wrote about that in the Absolute Sound, and there was a review that was written by Jacob Halliburton.
Right.
And when Jacob wrote about the avant-garde trios, then Paul comes in and says, "Oh, well, I got this friend that he's got the trios, and he's got this amplifier here."
It's one of your clients.
It's one of my clients, yeah, that has this amp. He has two of these amplifiers, as a matter of fact. But anyway, this client that had them, what Paul said is that he didn't hear any dynamic compression. Now, those are his words, okay? He didn't hear any dynamic compression, but he was talking about big, powerful, probably Class AB, multi-hundred watts, maybe even 1,000 watts into 2 ohms, that kind of thing, into big dynamic loudspeakers. And he said, but I heard compression there. And this 20-watt amp into these horns, I didn't hear any. I think that's accurate.
It's kind of a dynamic ease and freedom.
It is, but isn't that basically what he said, right? And I think we heard a good facsimile of that today. Some of that, And again,
even though these are 94 dB.
Even though they're 94 dB.
The avant-garde is 109.
And it's 109.
So the avant-garde will produce 109 dB SPL for 1 watt of power, which is crazy efficient.
It's crazy efficient, and now we're getting it. This is like an advertisement for the amp. Thank you, Robert. But that's another part of it. It was designed to go into very high efficiency loudspeakers and not be noisy. So when we listened to it here, once we got over that one issue, the R tubes, we got over that, and now we have practically nothing coming out of these loudspeakers. And if you were listening to these 109 decibel, 1 watt, 1 meter trios with these amplifiers in them, it's remarkable how little comes out of the loudspeaker. That was a design objective of David Berning's, and that's not an easy thing to do. That's a difficult thing to do. But as I was mentioning to Robert, some of the things that we do in these is we don't just put matched tubes in it, and the amp does auto bias. And it doesn't have any, again, I'll repeat, it doesn't have any external fuses on it because it's so fast in terms of correcting itself and being able to manage through those things. But the other part of it that really is kind of interesting to people when they buy these is that once they hear that transient speed and once they hear that level of openness without an output transformer, and then they can hear the way the thing has that drive and that mid-bass power, there's some uniquenesses there. I'm not saying that there isn't something out there that's better, because I know there is. And the way I build things is with the operational thought that this is a journey, right? It's not a destination. And I'm going to keep trying to make this thing better. And that's why Mike Levatis has helped me with these products. That's why the people at RevelPod have come in and helped me with it. That's every one of these people. Every one of them has added value. But I would be remiss again if I didn't say the 3 people that have made this possible. Starts with David Berning. Without the Zodal, we have nothing. That's plain and simple. But without Demetrius and these silver chokes, believe me, if you could only hear it with the other chokes, they're all the same inductance, identical. But when you hear it with these, it's all over with. And without the material science and the analog understandings that Steve McCormick brought from SMC Audio, I wouldn't have this product. I needed all of them. And so this is a good opportunity to thank all of them while I'm here.
We should back up a little bit and talk about David Berning with the ZOTL amplifier.
Oh, yeah.
So was that 1983 or something like that? He patented the output transformer?
You know what? I forgot the year when
it was a long time ago.
It's expired.
But all tube amplifiers need an output transformer.
Right.
That's that big thing in the back of the chassis to match the impedance between the output stage tubes and the loudspeaker. And it's like a bottleneck in the signal path, this output transformer. They saturate, they have losses, parasitic capacitance, all kinds of problems. So David Berning's insight was to make use a transformer, but not have it work over audio frequencies. It has a 250 hertz carrier, 250 kilohertz carrier, and the audio rides on that. So the transformer only operates over a very narrow band of frequencies. And it's like completely removing that bottleneck in the transformer. And there's a kind of openness that you don't get, and kind of a thickness that you get from transformers.
That's right.
That you don't hear with the ZOTL amplifiers.
That's absolutely true, and it's been true of his ZOTL amplifiers for a very long time. And as a little quick anecdote that I told you, they're output transformerless, hence OTL. But the late Harvey Rosenberg of New York Audio Labs, and the guy that took over Jules Futterman's, his original OTL amplifiers, he's the one that put the Z on there. Harvey was good at coming up with that kind of thing.
And Z is the symbol for impedance.
Exactly, exactly. So the other person that I want to give credit for this, may rest in peace, is Kondo-san. And Kondo-san was a bit of a mentor for me. Before I made the push-pull amplifiers, it's probably not that well known, but the Audio Note company, towards the end of his life, started making things like their 300B amps that were push-pull. And I remember talking to Kondo at the CES show, and unfortunately he died that night when he went to bed. He didn't wake up, but he was there at the CES show that year. Why, Kondo-san, are you starting to make amplifiers that are push-pull? And he said, because of the linearity. And why are we making, it's probably a good place to kind of wrap it up in a way, right? Why did I take this challenge to meet what Robert Harley wrote so eloquently about, as well as Nelson Pass, this SET conundrum? Why? Because it was a huge challenge. And because I had this vision that these other experts decided to join in that vision and allow us to do this. It's a collaborative effort with everybody. And I can't say enough about every single person that's involved in it. And that would include you, Robert. If you hadn't written those 2 reviews about the original amplifier, maybe some of these people might not have been so forthcoming when I came knocking. Let's be honest, let's be real, right? And that helped a great deal. So this amp is a really, for me, it's a labor of love. It really is, because I love making this thing. I feel so good about it, When I can sit here and listen to it with you and my clients, it's hard to explain. Hard to explain.
Well, thanks, Rick.
But thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert.
All right.
Thank you.
And
thank
watch
you.
for my review in an upcoming issue of the Absolute Sound.
Thank you, Robert.